The devil says three things about joy in Lewis's book, The Screwtape Letters. Devil Screwtape is giving his devilish nephew Wormwood some advice about laughter, actually. He's observed that true joy is one of the things that can give rise to laughter among humans. Well, laughter itself, something I'll talk about another time, but it's interesting what Screwtape says about joy. He doesn't give a very clear definition. I think the truth is he doesn't really understand it. Darkness doesn't understand light, we're told at the beginning of John's Gospel. What Screwtape does is give an example of it first, and then makes a comparison, and then burbles a bit about it being offensive. The example is a reunion after a time apart from each other between friends or lovers just before they go on holiday together. You know, they haven't seen each other for ages, and the adults come out with all their corny dad jokes, and the laughter and the bonhomie are totally out of proportion to the quality of the jokes. We know that, don't we? Which suggests to Screwtape that the real cause of the joy must be something else. What that real cause is, we do not know, he says. You see, joy's not something the devil understands. And there are some great examples of this kind of reunion in the Narnia stories, of course, like at the beginning of The Dawn Treader, when Lucy and Edmund turn up in the sea off the coast of Narnia, and they're dragged spluttering and soaking wet onto the ship, where they're reunited with Caspian, King of Narnia, and Reepicheep the Mouse, who they knew from their previous adventure in Narnia years before. And they all clap each other on the back with great delight, and there's warming mulled wine and catching up on all the latest news and being shown over the lovely ship, and Lucy feeling sure they were in for a lovely time. The only sour note struck by their obnoxious cousin Eustace. There's no joy in him. There's a much greater reunion scene, of course, at the end of the last battle, when there's the great entering into the real Narnia, just as we one day will enter into heaven. And there are hugs and kisses and joyous memories, and as all the good people and creatures of Narnia, past and present, pile around, it says there was greeting and kissing and handshaking, and old jokes revived. You've no idea how good an old joke sounds when you take it out again after a rest of 500 or 600 years. And the Lord Diggory at one point says, "Bless me, what do they teach them at these schools?" And everyone laughs because it's so like what he used to say in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. He even laughs himself. Going back to Screwtape, he says jokes themselves may or may not be useful to the devils in leading people towards damnation, depending on the kind of joke. After his example of the joyous reunion and admitting he can't really fathom the true cause of the laughter involved, he tries to make a comparison, and the comparison is with music. He gives music a capital M, and the highest joy is like something often expressed through music. But again, it's something the devil doesn't understand. It's quite opaque to us, he says. Something like it occurs in heaven, he says, but all he can see in it is what he calls a meaningless acceleration in the rhythm of celestial experience. Fancy technical sounding words which mean nothing. He doesn't understand it. In fact, in another letter, Screwtape says, "Music and silence, how I detest them both." What he prefers, and what hell is full of, is noise. He gives that a capital letter too, noise. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. The melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end. To him, noise is the audible expression of some of the values of hell. It crowds out spiritual desire and sensitivities. That's in Screwtape letter 22. For contrast to that, in Mere Christianity, Lewis says, for many people, not all, music is the thing known in the present life which most strongly suggests ecstasy and infinity. And he thinks this is why musical instruments are used in the Bible as a symbolic attempt to express the inexpressible concerning heaven. So it's not surprising, really, that music often features in the more sacramental moments of the Narnia stories to express the inexpressible. But that's a big topic, so I've done a separate video on the music of Narnia. Then thirdly, after his example of friends reunited and his comparison with music, Devil Screwtape finishes his exposition of joy and laughter with an assertion. And he says the phenomenon, another rather scientific distancing sort of term, the phenomenon is disgusting, he says. It's a direct insult to the realism, dignity and austerity of hell, which makes out that hell is somehow more real, more dignified than heaven or goodness or beauty or God even, and that joy is somehow frivolous and undignified, and that austerity, not fullness of joy, is somehow the more noble path. We often hear people say this, don't we? Oh, it's being so real, just because it's so grim what someone's saying. Well, it may be real, but goodness is real too. Lewis, in Letters to Malcolm, you may remember, says joy will be the true business of heaven. Another thing Screwtape doesn't understand. So joy is like a happy reunion, including all the bad jokes. And it's like music, the music of heaven even. And it's more real than the grim realism of hell.